left me for his secretary, then tried to sue me for half of the condo I bought before we met. When I saw Jason across from me in the courtroom, smug, confident, dressed like he was auditioning for the role of wronged ex, I almost laughed. He looked like a man who thought he'd already won. His lawyer sat beside him with that calm, practiced expression, nodding along like Jason's lies were gospel. All I could think was, this man left me for his 23-year-old secretary, and now he wants half of the condo I bought before I even knew his name? I kept my face neutral. It was the same expression I'd practiced in the mirror the night before. Emotionless, composed, professional. I didn't want him to see a flicker of the storm he caused in my life. He didn't deserve it. He never did. But let me back up. I met Jason 3 years ago at a real estate development conference. He worked in finance, loans, mortgages, the kind of thing that made most people's eyes glaze over, but not mine. I'm a real estate analyst. I live and breathe numbers, projections, and long-term returns. I just closed on my first condo, a beautiful 2-bedroom unit downtown with massive windows and a killer view. It was mine, entirely mine, paid for with years of budgeting, sacrifices, and a bit of luck. Meeting Jason seemed like the cherry on top. He was charming, smooth in a way that didn't feel fake at first. He listened when I talked about work, asked questions, even remembered small details. He said he was between places, having just moved out of a rental with a terrible roommate. He didn't have a car, but always offered to pay for Ubers. He cooked me dinner a few times. Nothing fancy, but thoughtful. I started to think he might actually be one of the good ones. After a few months of dating, he started spending most of his time at my place. It wasn't official at first. Just a drawer, then a suitcase, then full-blown cohabitation. He didn't contribute much financially. He said he was saving to start his own firm. I respected that. I was doing well enough to carry us both for a while, and if this was my partner, my future, I was willing to invest in us. He promised me he'd make it up to me once he was stable. We had our good moments. Weekend trips, quiet nights watching documentaries, inside jokes about our awful upstairs neighbor. But cracks started to show within the first year. He got impatient easily, dismissive when I was stressed about work, passive-aggressive when I made decisions without him, like hiring a cleaner or buying new furniture. He never said it outright, but he made me feel like my independence was an insult. Still, I chalked it up to stress. I wanted to believe in him. And then came the late nights. The client emergencies that pulled him away without warning. I'd call and get voicemail. He'd come home with vague stories and a tired smile, promising he'd make it up to me. I wanted to trust him, but something felt off. One night, I found a long blonde hair on the passenger seat of my car. Mine is dark. He swore it was from a coworker's jacket. I let it go. I didn't want to be that girlfriend. But the unease didn't go away. It all came to a head the night he didn't come home at all. I called him 12 times. Nothing. No message. No explanation. The next morning, he waltzed in around 8 a.m. with a coffee in hand and a lazy excuse about a friend's bachelor party that got out of hand. He smelled like perfume. Sweet and citrusy. Definitely not mine. That's when I knew. I didn't confront him immediately. I played it cool, observed, waited. Within a week, I found the texts. Dozens of them. Her name was Ashley, his assistant. 23, according to LinkedIn. Fresh out of college. The messages weren't even subtle. Pictures, late-night flirting. I wish I was waking up next to you. He had been seeing her for months. I remember sitting on the floor of my kitchen, my phone in my hand, my body shaking. I wasn't angry. Not yet, just hollow. I had opened my home to this man. I believed in him, supported him, trusted him with parts of me no one else had seen, and he used all of it like leverage to climb into someone else's bed. When I confronted him, he didn't even deny it. He had the audacity to say, I didn't want to hurt you, but I haven't been happy for a while. Like that made it better. Like that justified the betrayal. He left 2 days later with a few duffel bags and a smug smile, like he'd just won a breakup. I told him not to come back. He told me I'd regret being so cold. I thought that was the end. 2 months passed. I started healing. I went to therapy, took time off work, spent weekends repainting my condo, as if fresh walls could erase old memories. Slowly, I started to feel okay again. Then I got the letter. It was hand-delivered. I thought it was a mistake at first. A formal document from a law office I didn't recognize. The words blurred as I read. Petitioner seeks equitable division of shared marital assets, namely the residential property located at... I dropped the letter. Jason was suing me. He claimed that because we lived together for 2 years, and because he contributed to the home by helping with upkeep and expenses, he was entitled to half the equity of my condo. Half of the condo I bought before I met him. That I paid for, renovated, and maintained entirely on my own. I stood in my kitchen, the same spot where I once sobbed over his betrayal, and felt a surge of rage I didn't know I was capable of. He didn't just want to hurt me, he wanted to rob me. I picked up my phone and called the best real estate attorney I could find. "Hi," I said, my voice steady. "I need someone who's good at destroying delusional men in court." The attorney I hired, Camille, didn't smile much, but when she read the court filing from Jason, she let out a short, sharp laugh that felt like justice waiting to happen. She looked over the paperwork, tapped a few paragraphs, and said, "This is amateur hour. He's got nothing, but we'll need to crush him with precision." I explained everything. That I'd purchased the condo 2 years before meeting Jason. That my name was the only one on the title, on the mortgage, on every single utility bill and tax document. That he never paid rent. That any money he spent was on things like food delivery or the occasional toilet paper haul. Nothing that remotely resembled investment. Camille nodded. "He's banking on the fact that you'll panic and settle. He's hoping the emotional stress will get to you first. But if you've got proof, we can bury this." And I did. I had everything. Bank statements, transfer histories, receipts from when I bought furniture, most of which I'd bought long before he even moved in. A home inspection report I had done right before I closed. Even a repair log showing a plumbing upgrade I paid for out of pocket. Still, Jason's strategy was clear. Paint himself as a partner who helped build a life. He claimed he'd paid for improvements, helped me make financial decisions, and that we had an understanding that the home was ours. The nerve of him. We were never married. We never even had a verbal agreement about property. He had contributed nothing. But he was counting on optics, on being able to say he was there, as if that were enough. Camille filed a countersuit immediately for legal fees and emotional distress. She told me to be prepared. He's going to push every emotional button you have to get under your skin. Don't give him the reaction he wants. She was right. In his deposition, Jason spun a narrative that would have been laughable if it weren't so sleazy. He said he helped pick out the paint color in the living room, so he felt emotionally invested. He said we shared grocery expenses and that he often cooked, which somehow made him feel like he'd contributed to the household value. He even claimed he helped renegotiate my home insurance, when all he did was remind me once to call the provider after a letter came in the mail. But Camille was relentless. She cross-examined him like a predator circling its prey. "You say you helped with renovations," she said, flipping through a stack of receipts. "Can you identify a single invoice here with your name, your card, or even your email attached?" Jason stuttered. "You say you paid for groceries. I see that the vast majority of transactions came from this checking account," she continued, showing a printed bank statement. "Is this your account?" "No," he admitted. "It belongs to the respondent, my client. So when exactly did you financially contribute?" His mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. I gave cash sometimes," he finally said. "Cash you withdrew from an account that isn't in your name, isn't registered anywhere, and for which there is no record?" Jason turned red. She moved on to texts. Texts I had saved for months, even when it hurt to read them. In one, he thanked me for letting him stay rent-free. In another, he joked to a friend that he was mooching off a sugar-free sugar mama. I hadn't laughed when I first saw it, but hearing it read aloud in court, with Jason squirming in his seat, that was vindication. Camille submitted a motion for dismissal, but the judge decided to proceed to a full hearing. Apparently, Jason's legal team had made enough noise to warrant a formal review. Fine, I was ready. And yet, nothing prepared me for what came next. Ashley showed up. Jason's new girlfriend. The one he left me for. She walked into the courtroom wearing a dress far too tight for such a formal setting, clinging to Jason's arm like they were at a gala. She smirked when she saw me, like she knew something I didn't. Or maybe she thought she'd won. Camille leaned toward me and whispered, "She's just here to rattle you. Let her watch you win." Jason tried to make a scene. He asked the judge if Ashley could testify about the nature of our household. The judge shut it down immediately. Ashley had never lived with us, and her opinion was irrelevant. That didn't stop Jason from trying to whisper and wink at her during breaks like a high schooler in court for vandalizing a locker. I wondered how someone like him had managed to fool me for so long. The answer was painfully clear, because I let him. He was charming when he wanted to be, polished, kind, even considerate in superficial ways. But underneath all that was a man who believed he was owed something by every woman who helped him. A man who thought taking advantage wasn't abuse. It was strategy. I'd been one of many, but I was going to be the last one he ever tried to rob. The night before the final court date, Camille asked me if I was sure I wanted to submit a particular piece of evidence. It was a short, blurry video, taken at a friend's birthday party. Jason had been drunk, holding a red Solo cup, laughing with 2 of our mutual friends. "I don't pay rent," he slurred in the video. "She just lets me stay. I'm like a house cat, useless but cute." Everyone laughed. Jason doubled over. He didn't know I was filming it from the corner of the room. I remembered saving the video, almost deleting it the day after we broke up. Now it was the nail in his coffin. I told Camille, "Play it." The courtroom was silent when the video played. Jason's voice, thick with alcohol and arrogance, echoed through the speakers. "I don't pay rent. She just lets me stay. I'm like a house cat. Useless, but cute." The laughter that followed, off camera, made it even worse. He wasn't just admitting it. He was proud of it, bragging, like I was some idiot woman who didn't know what she had let into her home. I watched Jason's face as the clip ended. His jaw tightened. He shifted in his chair, glanced at his lawyer, and for the first time since this whole circus began, he looked unsure. The judge didn't say anything right away. He just stared at the screen for a moment longer, as if letting the absurdity of the situation settle over the room like dust. Then he looked down at his notes, cleared his throat, and said he'd need a recess before giving a final ruling. Jason stormed out of the courtroom the second we were dismissed. Ashley followed like a shadow, whispering urgently to him. "I caught bits and pieces. You didn't tell me she had video. This looks bad. Are we going to lose?" Camille stood beside me like a statue, arms crossed. "He's unraveling," she said quietly. "That's what desperation looks like." We went outside into the hallway. I leaned against the cool wall and took a breath. I hadn't realized how hard I'd been holding myself together until that moment. My hands were trembling, but I felt lighter. The worst of it, the public part, was over. No more pretending, no more hiding, just truth. That night, I got an email from Jason. It was pathetic. Subject line, "Let's be civil." The body of the email was full of backpedaling and half-hearted apologies. He wrote about how things got out of hand, how lawyers love to stir the pot, and how he never really wanted to take half the condo. He just thought he deserved something for the time he spent with me. He said he'd be willing to drop the suit if I agreed to a reasonable buyout, and offered him a gesture of good faith. A gesture of good faith? After he lied under oath, after he paraded his affair in front of me, after he tried to legally steal something I worked my entire adult life to afford. I didn't respond. Camille said it wasn't necessary. She filed a copy of the email as part of our final submission, noting the language that clearly showed his motive was personal bitterness, not financial justice. The final hearing was brief. Jason's attorney looked deflated, tired, like he'd realized he was never going to win this and just wanted to go home. Jason, however, still wore that thin veil of self-importance, like he was convinced the judge might still pity him. Or maybe he'd convinced himself that being pathetic was a strategy. He gave one final statement, rambling, contradictory, filled with vague claims and emotional manipulation. He said I was vindictive, that I humiliated him in court, and that the only reason he came after the condo was because I made him feel like a guest in his own relationship. The judge looked at him for a long moment and said, "Mr. Brennan, being invited into someone's home does not entitle you to ownership, especially when there is clear evidence that you contributed nothing of material value. This court finds no legal basis for your claim." Just like that, it was over. Camille asked the court to grant reimbursement for all my legal fees. The judge agreed. Jason was stunned. Ashley, who had been seated in the back of the courtroom, got up and walked out before the judge even finished speaking. I watched Jason watch her leave. I didn't feel sorry for him. Not for a second. Outside the courthouse, I finally allowed myself to smile. It wasn't triumph. It wasn't revenge. It was release. Camille shook my hand. "You did well," she said. "You did better," I replied. She gave a rare, tight-lipped grin and walked off toward her car, heels clicking confidently on the pavement. I stood there for a while, letting the breeze wrap around me, watching people pass by as if the world had never stopped for my pain. And maybe it hadn't, but I had survived something massive. Something that could have crushed me if I'd let it. That night, I returned to my condo. My condo. Every inch of it felt different now. The walls I had once painted while crying. The sofa we had bought together. Well, I bought it. He sat on it. The kitchen table where I'd once waited for him to come home. It was all still here, but the weight of it was gone. I poured myself a glass of wine, stood by the massive window overlooking the city's skyline, and exhaled. Then I picked up my phone. Not to scroll, not to text him, just to open my camera. I snapped a photo of the view, captioned it with a single word, "Mine," and saved it to a private album. I didn't need to post it anywhere. I didn't need to prove anything. I just needed to remind myself. The weeks that followed were quieter than I expected. No more lawyer calls. No more court appearances. No more emails from Jason with subject lines like, "We need to talk," or "Can we resolve this like adults?" The silence wasn't just peaceful. It was healing, until it wasn't. About 3 weeks after the final ruling, I came home from work to find an envelope wedged under my door. No postage, no name, just a blank white envelope. For a second, my heart jumped. It felt childish, but my brain went straight to the worst-case scenarios. Jason showing up, Jason sending threats, Jason trying something stupid. Inside was a letter. Handwritten. His handwriting. It was messy, rushed. Unlike his usual controlled, confident scrawl, it looked like it had been written in a single frantic sitting. He started with apologies. Not real ones. Not the kind that take responsibility, but the kind that try to provoke sympathy. I've lost everything. Ashley left. I had to move back in with my parents. I know you hate me, but I never meant to hurt you. Then it veered into guilt. You were the only person who ever believed in me. Maybe I didn't appreciate that. Maybe I was scared of how much you had your life together. I felt useless. I acted out, but that doesn't mean I didn't love you. And finally, desperation. If you can find it in your heart to forgive me, maybe we can have coffee. Just talk. I promise I won't bring up the condo again. I just need closure. I folded the letter carefully, placed it back in the envelope, and dropped it directly into the shredder. Closure? I had mine. He just hadn't gotten his. Camille had warned me. Men like Jason don't take losing well, especially when they thought they had the upper hand. She had seen it before. Cases where the legal battle ended, but the psychological warfare kept going. Regret disguised as manipulation. Nostalgia as an excuse to reopen wounds. I changed the locks the next day, just in case. And then I let it go. Again. Life began to move on. I started saying yes to invitations again. Brunches, happy hours, even a friend's bachelorette weekend in the mountains. For the first time in a year, I caught myself laughing without guilt. I rearranged the furniture. Got rid of the couch entirely. Bought a deep green velvet one that made the whole place feel brand new. It was indulgent and unapologetic. Everything I wanted to be. And then 6 weeks later I saw him again. Not in person. Online. A friend sent me a screenshot from a local business Facebook group. Jason had posted an ad. He was starting a consulting firm. His caption read, "After years of experience in real estate finance, I'm finally taking the leap and launching my own business." The comments were a mess. People from the conference circuit recognized him. Some offered support. Others, clearly aware of what happened between us, posted subtweets and sarcastic jabs. One comment in particular stood out. "Hope this firm is more legit than your last attempt to cash in on someone else's assets." I should have been mad, or at least annoyed. But I wasn't. It was amusing, watching him spin a narrative again. Still trying to be someone he wasn't. Still trying to build on foundations he didn't pour himself. He was always chasing shortcuts. Easier ways to success, quicker paths to validation. And me? I was living in the home I bought, sleeping better than I had in years. Finally back to the person I was before he blurred the edges of who I'd become. One afternoon, a couple of weeks after the Facebook post, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. The message was short. "Jason," he said, "I know you probably hate me. I just wanted to say thank you. You made me stronger, even if I didn't realize it at the time. That condo, I see now it was never mine. But you were. At least for a little while." Click. I stared at the wall for a long time after that. Not angry, not even shaken, just exhausted. Because even in defeat, he still thought he had the right to define the story, to frame himself as someone who had me. As if I'd been a phase, a woman-shaped stepping stone. So I deleted the voicemail, blocked the number. And that night, I did something I hadn't done in ages. I threw a party. Nothing huge. Just 10 people. Close friends, co-workers, neighbors, people who had seen me at my worst and never asked me to pretend. I opened a few bottles of wine, turned up a playlist full of 2000s R&B, and finally danced barefoot in my own kitchen. The green couch became the unofficial photo booth. We laughed until our stomachs hurt. At one point, someone spilled red wine on the rug and panicked. But I waved it off. "It's just a rug," I said. "Rugs can be replaced." A metaphor, maybe. Or maybe I was just done holding on to things too tightly. Later, as I cleaned up and turned off the lights, I stood in the middle of the living room and looked around. My place, my life, my rules. I didn't need Jason's regret. I didn't need his closure. And I sure as hell didn't need his idea of what I was worth. Because I knew now, I had built something unshakable. And no one could take that from me. Months passed. By then, Jason had faded into a memory. Sharp at the edges but dulled by time. I barely thought about him anymore. When I did, it was like watching an old movie I'd seen too many times. Predictable. Cringeworthy. No longer painful. I kept moving forward. The condo, my sanctuary, became more than just a home. It became a symbol. I hosted book clubs, dinners, quiet nights alone with a record player humming in the background. I even adopted a cat. A real one. Not the kind who called himself useless but cute. Her name was Juniper, and she liked to sit on the windowsill where Jason once stood, staring out like he owned the view. She claimed it now. Unbothered, entitled in the way only cats can be. I like to think she understood something about reclamation. One Friday afternoon, I got an unexpected email. It was from Camille. Subject: thought you'd want to see this. She had attached a PDF of a court docket update. Apparently, Jason's business, his little consulting firm, was being investigated. A former client claimed he had misrepresented his licensing and qualifications. There was talk of fraud, small scale, but enough to potentially tank what little reputation he had managed to rebuild. I stared at the screen for a while. I didn't feel satisfied. I didn't feel vengeful. I didn't feel anything. I just closed the email and made a cup of tea. Because by now, I had learned the difference between justice and obsession. I didn't need to root for his downfall. His choices were doing that all on their own. And frankly, I was too busy living to keep watching the wreckage behind me. But closure, it seems, has a way of circling back when you least expect it. It came, oddly enough, from Ashley. She messaged me on LinkedIn. Bold, right? I didn't recognize her name at first. She had updated her last name after a quick marriage and an even quicker divorce, apparently. But her face was unmistakable. Still young, still polished, still trying very hard to look like she had it all together. Her message read, "Hey Sarah, I know this is weird, but I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. I didn't know everything that was going on back then. I was naive. Jason made it sound like you were some cold, controlling career woman who didn't believe in him. I didn't realize he was manipulating both of us." She went on to explain that their relationship imploded not long after the trial, that he had been cruel, dismissive, that he borrowed money from her too, that he never paid it back. "Anyway," she ended, "I guess I just wanted to tell you that you didn't deserve what happened. I hope you're doing well. I think you're incredible." I didn't respond. Not out of bitterness, just because I didn't need her apology. Not anymore. I wasn't the woman from 2 years ago. I wasn't sitting on my kitchen floor, stunned by betrayal. I wasn't crying into my pillow while some man justified his cowardice. I was here, now, and I had me. A few weeks after that, I got an invitation to speak at a real estate seminar for young professionals. It was the same event where I'd met Jason all those years ago. I hesitated at first, but then I said yes. I stood in front of a room full of 20-somethings, all wide-eyed and eager, notebooks open, pens clicking. I talked about building equity, avoiding financial traps, understanding your legal rights when cohabitating with a partner. The practical stuff. The real stuff. But near the end, I went off script. I said, if I could leave you with one piece of advice, it's this. Don't give away pieces of your foundation to people who haven't earned it. Not emotionally, not legally, not financially. Protect your space and protect your peace. Because once it's yours, you'll realize nothing feels better than knowing no one else can take it from you. Applause followed, not thunderous, but warm, genuine. A few people came up afterward to thank me. One woman, probably 24, said, "I just moved in with my boyfriend and now I'm rethinking everything." I smiled and handed her Camille's business card. Later that night, I walked back into my condo. Juniper greeted me at the door, tail flicking lazily. I kicked off my heels and looked around. The velvet couch, the photo wall, the cozy mess of my life in motion. This wasn't just my home. It was my comeback, my proof. He left me for his secretary. He tried to sue me for something that never belonged to him. He thought he could rewrite my story. But in the end, I wrote the ending myself, and it didn't include him.